Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Monday, May the 5th, 2025, and today's topic is going to be a deep dive about the basics and about something I call the Art of Sedone Triad, or the AOS Triad. So I'm just going to jot that down. So it's just going to be, I have a few pages, 3 pages left in the sketchbook, although it takes a while to fill up a page. I think this week I'm going to use just this page to go over, do the deep dive and just to go over a lot of the basics, but also the triad. So just to get warmed up. Before we begin, welcome back if you are returning, and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day, and I use timers to stay focused and to build a habit and to help me see how long these videos are. I'll start a 10-minute timer. So this first video of the deep dive will be kind of like an intro, and just to get warmed up, I'm going to draw spheres. So I call it a triad. So let's just draw spheres. The first one will be imagination. So I'm getting warmed up here. And this one will be study. So I have a few videos about this. I don't mind going over it again. And this one is style. So in a way, it'll be a deep dive into these topics. And I call it a triad because they are connected. Now, this is just a concept. So a way for me to think about it and illustrate it and explain. But it works pretty well. So I keep returning to it and developing it. So imagination for me is the fun part of drawing or of art. And it has to do with, first of all, the idea of what to sketch. So that's the imagination. So it activates something. The imagination is what it activates. So yeah, to begin with, imagination is ideas. So these all start with I for some reason. Maybe because it's coming from your imagination. Ideas and inspiration. So these are things that are invisible. That's an I. So yeah, the imagination, you could be imagining something and it's invisible. And then study, we'll stick with the letter S. So study is, a lot of times we understand study because of school. So an example here would be, I call imagination fun because the example I have is when you're a kid and you're learning to draw, since that's a big part of what the channel is about. As far as art, it's drawing is a big part of it, for the channel. There's more to art than drawing, of course. And drawing is kind of my way. It's fun for me, but it's my way to get into the bigger world of art. When you're a kid and you're drawing, I don't think you would go to a kid and have them think that it's fun. If you were to say, okay, now you're going to learn how to draw. You're going to learn the principles of drawing. I don't think kids really get into drawing by learning the principles of drawing. I think they, at least the way I got into it, is they just drew stuff from in their imagination. And of course it's going to look like kids' drawings, but the fun is there. That's where fun is from. Now there could be things about studying that is also fun. It could involve tools. So I'm using a pen and paper, that could be fun. Reading could be fun. And also it could activate maybe higher levels of cognition, if you will. And that can also be fun. And then, so for style can be an aesthetic. We can call it that. It can be a motif. It could be it's also the medium is a style. So I just kind of keep adding to this as the ideas come to me. So a medium is like pen and ink, for example. So notice that to draw something, it's going to have to look a certain way just because of the medium that I'm using. I would say like study is also like a technique would be a study. And by that I mean cross-hatching is a technique. Like you could learn how to do it. So an example could be if you draw these lines parallel and keep the spacing consistent, it's going to look a certain way. And if you keep the technique, so another technique would be to go in the opposite direction. So that's something that can be taught to somebody. So if you go in the other direction, you made it look darker and gave it like a certain texture, but the texture is coming from like the pen and ink. So for example, I'll just put pen and ink. The texture is coming from the fact that I'm using this specific tool, and so it's going to have that kind of look. If this were paint, it would have a different kind of look. And if it were like watercolor, then you could put like a darker color and it would have a different look because of it's watercolor. And then that's like the style of it. And so that's important because no matter what I draw, so let me just kind of draw like something different. So let's say I draw like a face. So no matter what the subject matter is, so how did I know to draw that face? So that's coming from like the studying, but I'm having to use imagination. So imagination, I think everybody like has it. It's just maybe it works a little differently, kind of like the way people think works differently. And obviously anything that you practice is going to like improve. Same thing here. It's a face. However, to get like, I'm just going to copy like the shading, for example. So if you use the same technique, like basically parallel and keep it like the spacing consistent, it looks a certain way. And because of the pen, it's going to match, like the style will match. If I were to use like a different thing, then it wouldn't match as much. It would look more mixed media. This is, like I said, kind of an intro, sort of. Like the big thing is obviously for me, like the daily sketching. Like that's like the main thing, and then some of these ideas may be helpful, some of them might be a little bit kind of advanced, but we'll stick to the basics also. It'll be a mix of things. So notice that if I use like the same direction, it blends it more. Instead of looking like its own texture, like hair and stuff, it looks like lighting, but it also gives it like a texture. If you were to go in like the other direction, you can create a darker value, and then same thing, keep going in a different direction, and it creates a texture also, and that's like cross-hatching, and that can be taught. But like that's, hopefully you can see how imagination, like study and style, it goes together. Now I didn't look at any reference, so that's like the imagination part, and that to me is like the fun part. But like the study part starts to have importance whenever you get to whenever you start to think, well, I want it to look better in some way, and so you'll have to study. What do I mean by like I want it to look like better? So part of it could be, let's say you're drawing a face, it could be that you want it to look more like a face. Like that could be the thing. And so that's kind of what I mean. Okay. It's always fun to draw faces. So that's the study. The style aspect of it, a lot of that is preference. But I mean, of course, you can use a style. So an example could be whenever I was doing like freelance illustration for clients and stuff. I mean, they didn't really, the finished product wouldn't look like this. This was sort of just the sketch, like preliminary sketch. And so like that's the style, but that's not what they were wanting. So they wanted it to be like a color illustration. So part of the technique is like on a face here, like if you aren't careful, it'll start to look like a different texture, like a beard or something like that. But that's a different topic, drawing faces. But as I wrap up this video, I wanted to get it started. One thing I'll talk about is, so I'll talk about all of these things. So for example, like a concept could be something like drawing positive and negative space. So I kind of did that here. So positive and negative space could be, let's say I'm going to draw some like trees. That's kind of a good example. If I just draw the negative space, I could just do some shapes. And I'm just going to say that this is like the negative space. And you can just put some random size like shapes because trees are like organic and stuff. The value, which is like the tonal pattern, is the same thing with like the cross hatching. You can just decide that that's a value right there. And you could say that that's, so what's left is the positive space. So you drew the negative space, but the positive space, like the subject, is actually like the tree branches. And then if you want to like do the values, you could decide that kind of like this, like the shadows on this side. So in a way, the shadows are also kind of like the negative space. You could do it that way. The alternative would have been, let's say that you drew the actual like tree branches. So I'm going to draw a tree branch. You could have done this. So I'm drawing the actual branch. Kind of like this. So you could draw the tree branch itself. So the branch is the positive space, and then you can put in the values. Another example would be, let's say there's clouds, and you can just draw the sky, which is like the negative space, because the clouds are the subject. So I got the clouds from drawing the space around the clouds. Like the clouds are the object in the picture, but then you can define it, and that would be drawing the actual clouds. So that's positive and negative space. Just wanted to get something started. So in this example, like with the face, by doing this, in a way I'm drawing like the negative space of the, instead of actually drawing the eye. So I'm gonna kind of draw the eye right here. So like the eyebrow. So instead of drawing the lips, you could draw the space. It's like back and forth. Part of that's like the style of it. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah, it can be helpful to kind of break down these principles. But that'll be it for today. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and I will continue the deep dive into the basics and also the triad. And I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine. And if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it. And until next time, keep on sketching.